Hello and welcome to the Behind the Content podcast. I'm your host, Heaven. I actually already filmed a first episode, which I filmed yesterday, and I was like, why am I filming this episode when people don't even know who I am? So I decided to film this podcast and we can kind of get to know each other, and I feel like I've been on social media for so long. I've had so many new followers and friends and connections and networking that no one really knows who I am, why I started, where I came from, and why I'm still here is the real thing. So let's start with the basics. I'm 23 years old. My birthday is actually next month, which is October 15th, which means I am a Libra. And it's crazy to think that I'll be 24 next month because I feel like I am one of those people in their earlier 20s, and I feel like I'm still a teenager. So when I'm doing things, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm an adult. I've been adulting for years now. It's this weird dilemma that I had that I'm like, no, I'm still literally a child. With that, I was actually born in the Philippines. I moved here when I was about to the US in, I don't even know what year it was, but I was about 4 years old, 3 to 4 years old. I remember seeing photos of my third birthday in the Philippines, so I probably turned 4 years old in the US, and I've been here since then. I come from a military family, so my dad's actually still in the Navy, and my mom and dad are divorced. I don't know why that was important to say, but I feel like that'll help in a future podcast episode, and we can talk about that. With me living in the Philippines and being born in the Philippines, English is actually my second language, and people I feel like find that so hard to believe because I speak so well. It's because I've been here for so long, and also since I was so young moving over here, I learned English pretty young, so it was pretty fast for me to catch on. I honestly think I caught on pretty fast because I was already a fast learner, and apparently I was super smart when I was like a baby. I ended up teaching ESL students when I was like in 3rd or 4th grade, and I think that's kind of crazy because I had just learned English too. I digress. A little bit more about me. I am now a full-time content creator, social media influencer, all that kind of jazz, all of that. But before my dream job that I have today, I used to be a retail associate. I worked at Foot Locker. I've worked at Aldo. I was a barista, and I also was like a personal assistant and an executive assistant. I've been a nanny. I've done like all those kinds of things. But I actually started working really young. I think I started working when I was about 15 and a half or 16, like around that age. And I actually started working because my mom and her ex-boyfriend at the time had broken up, and unfortunately he was a very stable source of income for our family, so it was a very big deal that they broke up. And it was actually my senior year in high school. I remember coming home, I think like my second or third day from my senior year in high school, like, oh fuck, because I came home, like they were yelling at each other, there was boxes packed, like things were already packed up, and I was like, what is going on? And then I realized that they were splitting up. And for the first few months of my senior year, we were living with my mom's friend at the time, and it was just really horrible because it was, number one, my senior year, I had taken on an AP class, an honors class, and a college credit class. And I also started working that year, and it was just a really hectic and crazy year, but I think it was my favorite year out of all of the years in high school. That happened to me, and then I started working because I was like, okay, I can't, not that I can't, but I don't want to rely on my mom for my high school activities, especially since it was senior year, because we had like senior breakfast, senior cruise, we had obviously like graduation, prom, all of the dances, and like grad night at Disneyland. I just didn't want my mom to take on that full load of, I guess, high school, especially my senior year, because I knew that was going to be the most expensive year. I also learned how to drive that year, so I wouldn't have to rely on my mom to take me to school every day. And I was like one of the first people out of all of my friends, even though I was like one of the youngest person, to actually get my driver's license and drive to school. Fast forward, I ended up moving up to Oceanside Vista area, and I spent, I think, 3 years over there. I was living with an ex at the time, but that didn't end up working out. I ended up moving back down to San Diego in, I think, 2021-ish, and I really didn't want to move back to San Diego because I was just living independently for so long, and moving back to San Diego meant that I would have to move back in with my mom, and I just felt like I was like going backwards in life, and I felt like I did so many of these cool things and lived by myself and bought my first car and done all these cool things, and then moving back to San Diego, I felt like it was like, oh my god, my life sucks. I can't do anything right. Like, I lived by myself for 3 years and now I can't afford it, and like all these other things that started going going on my head, and I really tried so hard not to move back down. I even thought about moving like to a different state or a different like LA or like something completely different. I even thought about moving downtown San Diego and just like working up in Oceanside still, just so I can live by myself, but nothing literally worked out. I ended up looking at an apartment downtown, and it was like a really good price, and it was brand new, like they were still building it, and I went in and I was like, no. Like I just didn't feel that would be my home, so I didn't end up taking that apartment. Funny enough, I ended up moving home in my mom's apartment, and I think I lived there for like a month, if that. I was also barely ever home because I had just moved back home. So like San Diego's like my hometown. I grew up here, I graduated here, everything. I have so many friends here. So the first month I moved back in, I was literally like always out, hanging out with my friends, catching up with old friends, like all that kind of stuff. And then I was also working so much because I was driving all the way up to Oceanside to work as a barista back then. So I would literally drive an hour to work every single day, to and from work. Luckily I worked not luckily, but since I worked as a barista, I worked at like 5 in the morning and then didn't get off until 1 p.m. So I wouldn't hit any traffic if I like worked that hour or those hours. So it wasn't too bad. Yeah, I ended up moving back home, and I just felt like complete shit because I was like, oh my god, I'm such a loser. Like, who moves back in with their parents? But I tried to like look at it in a better sense, like, okay, maybe this is for a reason. And I just kind of like went with it, tried to make the tiny little room that I had mine, and it just never ended up, like, I just felt like I wasn't supposed to be home until I think a month after I literally met basically my husband now, my fiance. I met him a month later, and funny enough, he actually ended up moving into his apartment 2 weeks after I moved back home, and his apartment at the time was literally an exit away from my mom's house, which is like 5-minute drive. So I think that was the reason why I ended up back in San Diego, because you could have asked me at any point in my life, I would never have moved back to San Diego, because I was like, there's literally nothing there for me. I don't know, I was just like, it's my hometown, I don't want to live there. But at the base of it, I always loved coming home to San Diego when I lived up north a little bit, and it's always gonna feel like home for me. And it's crazy now because it is a home for me, since I am now engaged and about to get married. And it's just crazy how, oh my gosh, am I gonna cry? I'm starting my period soon. It's just crazy how things in life work out. So that's a little bit of background on me. Let's do some social media background, because some of you guys don't even know that I actually used to do YouTube when I was like, oh my gosh, like 10 years old. Like when it first started being like a thing, I was really big on dolls. I loved like Bratz dolls. Barbie dolls were like, I was more of like a Bratz doll girl. Eventually I ended up moving on to like American Girl dolls, and that's when I started my YouTube phase, and I started watching stuff on YouTube about like American Girl dolls, and that's how I got into them. And I was like, oh my god, these are so cool. Got my first one. I think I had like three or four, and those dolls were expensive. Okay, they were like $100 each. I don't know why my mom let me even have that, because we were not like the richest people in the world, but she, you know, made things work all the time, which I'm so appreciative of. We would even go up to LA and like go to the American Girl doll store, and one time we went to the cafe, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Very grateful for that time in my life. Definitely not something that I would even think could have happened, because they were so expensive, and I was just like not really sure if I would ever get one. I ended up getting like 3 or 4 of them, which was awesome. But that's what really started my YouTube interests, I guess, because I would watch girls make videos with the dolls and do like little crafts and all that kind of stuff. If you didn't know, I'm like a super crafty like art person, so it really sparked my interest. And then one day I literally was watching this one girl, I don't even remember her name, and I was like, you know what, I could do that. Like I can make videos, edit them, and put them on YouTube. I'm gonna do that. And I literally started doing it all because of my dolls, and I would make like crafts for them, or like unboxing, come with me to the American Girl doll store, and then what I got, hauls and stuff. And that's kind of how I started on my YouTube journey. Obviously I kept that a secret because I didn't want anyone to know that I played with dolls for such a long time in my life, but I did, and I'm kind of grateful for it because I ended up really enjoying that whole process. And obviously as I grew up and transitioned into like middle school, I moved away from dolls, and I actually ended up selling most of them, and I started like a Instagram boutique and like selling stuff and business and like all that kind of stuff, which was also another hint to something that I would do in the future. But I ended up going to middle school, as normal people do, and I grew out of that phase, and I started going into my like beauty makeup era. I feel like that's a good era because you're like in middle school, you're not really a kid, but you're not really like a teen, like it's like this weird era in life. So I ended up filming makeup tutorials because that's the things that I was watching at the time, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I could do this, so I did it. And I would film like hair. I think one of them was like, I wish I saved these videos and didn't delete them. I wish I just like privated them, but I straight up deleted them. But it was like I remember doing like hairstyles, fashion and outfits, makeup tutorials, and that's kind of how I shifted into that area of YouTube. And then I went into high school and like got into some stuff, high school drama, and kind of started steering away from YouTube until I went to college and I graduated, and I was like, hey, I still really like doing this. I'm gonna keep doing it. And then in college, at the time I was working, so I bought like box lights. I had my own room at the time, so I was like, oh my god, this is perfect. Like, this is the time for me to do YouTube and take it seriously and everything like that. But then obviously I started becoming an adult. Life hit me and I had to start working full time. This is how I ended up in like Oceanside. We moved up to like Oceanside Vista after high school because her boyfriend at the time lived up there. He was like, oh, you guys can just come up here and live with me. And I was like, heck yeah, like let's get out of here. And then we moved up there. Then it didn't work out, so then she wanted to move back to San Diego because she was still working down here, and I was like, I'm not moving back there. Like, I already moved everything up here, transferred all of my credits, got a job, I'm in school. So I ended up making the decision to move out at like 18 years old, and that's how I ended up there. But of course, like I said, life happened. I was dating a guy, didn't work out, and that's just kind of how it went. I would want to start my YouTube channel or like social media full time and like all that kind of stuff, but like life would just happen. Either I would be too much school or too much work or just life in general. At one point I was literally working 2 jobs and going to school full time and trying to have like a social media career, which was beyond me. I could not even do half of that today probably. I just ended up so wrapped up in life that I just didn't take it seriously. Now I'm in a better position. I ended up quitting my executive assistant job a couple months ago, the most stressful job I've ever had in my life. Kind of like betting on myself, and I'm so thankful now that I have a partner that actually completely supports me in this, so super grateful for that. But now that we are here, I had an idea a couple months ago to start a podcast, and I kind of wanted to talk about a lot of things, but the main thing and the main reason I wanted to start this podcast was to kind of discuss these things that happen behind the scenes that people don't normally see through social media. If I didn't say any of that, none of you probably would have even known that I went through any of that during the time, because I was just, obviously I only post, not even just me, everyone posts whatever they want, but they always post like the happy parts of life, the things that they want you to see. They don't want you to see them like struggling or whatever. No, they want you to see them like in a yacht, like, you know what I mean? So I kind of wanted to create this podcast to shed some light on the behind the scenes of being like a creator, content creator, following your dreams, all that kind of stuff, kind of motivate everyone that, you know, it may all be butterflies and rainbows and everything on social media, but that shit is fake, okay? I'm very much a perfectionist, and I think this is a good way to lower my expectations and kind of be more vulnerable and transparent with you guys, because I have been on social media for so long, obviously. I definitely also want to end up bringing like guests onto this podcast and kind of seeing things that they've gone through, and hopefully the things that they've gone through and moved past it and moved on from it and learned from it will inspire some of you guys to kind of feel the same way, resonate with some stuff, and maybe learn some things along the way so you guys don't make the mistakes that we do. And yeah, overall, I just want to inspire you guys and help you guys along the way. So if there's any like topics or suggestions or things that you want to cover, let me know. We'll talk about it. I also am starting a series, obviously, on my whole platforms talking about why does nobody talk about. So if there's anything you want to talk about that nobody else really talks about, let's bring it up, okay? But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy this podcast. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I've just been kind of like perfectionist about it because I feel like I have to have like the perfect mic, the perfect this, the perfect that. But I was like, you know what, fuck it, like I already have a mic, it's literally from Target, and I have a camera, let's just do it and see where it goes. But I have a lot of future plans for this podcast as well that I'm not going to talk about. But thank you guys so much for listening and getting to know me. Hopefully we start an amazing positive community where we just like inspire people and learn from each other's mistakes and just know that you're not alone in situations that everyone goes through shit. It's life. It is what it is. Nobody's perfect. Social media is fake. So thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys in my next podcast. Bye.